are back from summer vacation, well-rested, nice tans, and ready to go with the Fearsome Twosome. I'm Lindsey, Thiry.
And I'm Gary Klein. Welcome to the Los Angeles Times weekly look at all things Rams.
You might notice that there is a new name for this podcast. Gary and I took us all summer, but we finally got creative. We finally decided to put our writing skills, our creative skills to use. And it's not that creative. Obviously, it's a play. You guys all know it's a play off the Fearsome Foursome.
I think it's a good idea. It's all about branding, right? That's what they keep pounding into everyone's head. Got to have an identity. We are going to be talking about the Rams. We are going to be doing this very regularly.
Very regularly,
right? Because
yes.
The feedback we've gotten from listeners throughout last season, when you ask for constructive criticism, most of the comments that I got back was, we want that more regularly. So we're going to do it every week. Every week,
Gary. We're doing it whether you're there or not.
And it will be posted to the Times website and on various
iTunes,
platforms on Wednesdays.
On Wednesdays, that's the goal. We're gonna have to stick to this now. Fearsome Twosome, because Gary, he's our fence sitter and I'm our decision maker. Let's just call it what it is, right, Gary?
You're the fearsome one. Is that what you're saying?
Something like that.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of changes here for the Rams. A new beginning, if you will, with Sean McVay. We had plenty of fodder for conversation last year with the Rams making the big move, with Jeff Fisher, with Jared Goff, with everything that was going on. But it seems like before training camp even opens, there's plenty of great storylines.
A quick rundown of kind of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to recap a little bit of the summer, talk about training camp, what to watch for, get into some of the contract situations, talk about Jared Goff, Todd Gurley. Are those guys going to emerge this season? We'll get into some free agents, talk about the rookies, and then, of course, always the best segment is your questions. Tweet them at us, always at LA Times Klein or at Lindsey Thiry. And I'm excited to tell everyone, we have left the mobile studio. Not that it's not great, Gary. We all love your minivan. We have left the mobile studio. We're on the campus right now, sitting outside in the shade, of course, at UC Irvine. It's quiet now, but things are really getting set up here for training camp, which opens on Saturday.
This is the second year that the Rams are here. Last year, of course, with all the movement, this was a temporary home. They had been in Oxnard. They came to Irvine. They went out to Thousand Oaks. This is going to be a little bit of a different situation, not only for the Rams, but for fans, because they're only going to be here about 3 weeks. The experience that the fans had last year, some of the bleachers now are shaded. Fans can get into on a first-come, first-served basis. But I guess probably more importantly for a lot of fans, there's going to be a beer garden. Right?
Now, I didn't check out the selections, but just hearing that there's a beer garden, that's got to warm a lot of people's hearts. Or I guess it's meant to cool them down, really.
Yeah. Sean McVay overseeing training camp for the first time. He's been an assistant. 8 seasons, I think it's been. And so he's running the show now. Jared Goff back for his second year, going into this training camp as the #1 quarterback. Aaron Donald, is he going to show up? He wants a new contract. He probably will be here, I would guess, just because of the fines.
Or he can start writing checks.
So there's a lot going on. But as you mentioned, we're sitting here kind of in this plaza that somewhat overlooks the practice fields, but there's kind of a little bit of a new addition just off to the left as well, right?
Yeah, they have a nice media tent that you don't have to go down into some stairways, kind of a dark cavern where we didn't have a light for half of the training camp last year. The Rams definitely, things a lot easier for them to set up this year because logistically they also don't have to worry about moving from St. Louis. The interesting part to me, now you all probably recall from watching Hard Knocks last year, guys, different modes of transportation around campus to get to the field and to the facilities. We saw some bicycles, a lot of bicycles. I believe it was Kenny Britt who drove a dune buggy or some little golf cart.
One, yes.
Or not golf cart, but a go-kart, flipped it. This year we have been told that most of the players, almost all of the players, have rented golf carts. Now, Gary and I had the privilege of riding around, Rams PR folk, gave us a ride around the facility on the golf cart, and one of the coolest features, I don't know why I was always amazed by this was cool. They made a golf cart parking lot, so these little mini golf cart spots. There's no numbers, no names on them, but I'm imagining those golf carts will be lined up next to the field and there's going to be a pecking order.
I would guess the vets will have closest to the locker room with the rookies further away. But the UC Irvine campus, there still are plenty of students and faculty and administrators walking around here. So my understanding is that the players will be required to take a golf cart driving course before they're let loose on campus. But I think they want to save those legs for the season. They don't want them walking too far, apparently, or biking.
Biking. Just try and make the season better than last season at all costs. Give them all golf carts. So let's talk about what to watch for if you're coming out to training camp. Of course, practices. You can check the schedule. I believe we've posted on the LA Times website. Most practices 3 o'clock, open to the public. If you're coming out to training camp, or if you're just checking out our coverage in the LA Times, what should you be watching for? I know that we're going to spend a lot of time probably writing about Sean McVay as the new head coach, the youngest head coach in the NFL. Gary, you got to see quite a bit of him through OTAs and to see kind of the stamp he's put on the program already. What do you think you're going to see out here?
The background or the feedback you get from players, from coaches, and just from dealing with him in a small media situation and in a larger situation. Very confident, very well prepared, very knowledgeable according to the players, and so it's been nothing but high marks. And he kind of has laughed about that because he understands there has been no pressure. Nothing's really happened to this point. Well, when they have their first practice on Saturday, the pressure starts because now you're going to be accountable for this team's record once they get into the regular season. So I think, obviously, McVay will be a big storyline. Jared Goff, people who came out to training camp last year will remember early on he seemed to have trouble even getting out of the huddle or at the line of scrimmage. He has matured. 7 games, no wins last year, but when he came into training camp last year, he was the number 2 guy behind Case Keenum. Keenum's long gone. Goff is the starter.
Now, this has been bubbling up recently, the Sean Mannion thing. I think that just shows, we're in the dog days of summer. People have run out of things to talk about. Sean Mannion, I'm sure, is a capable, serviceable backup. Is there a quarterback competition? Let's just settle this right here. There's no competition with Jared Goff and Sean Mannion.
They will be competing as all athletes do on the field, but Jared Goff was the number 1 pick in the 2016 draft. Everything they have done is, including hiring Sean McVay, was done to nurture that talent that they think he has. So Jared Goff is the starter. Eric Dickerson did an interview a few days ago and said,
Gary, it's only July and we're bringing up Eric Dickerson?
Exactly.
Oh, my.
Absolutely. And he said, based on what he saw last year at a practice, he would go with Mannion as the starter. So that kind of stirred what stirred it as well. And people, of course, are interested. It's no secret that the most popular guy on any team is the number 2 quarterback until he becomes the number 1. So Mannion, hey, to his credit, when he has gotten the opportunity, certainly last year in exhibitions, he's played well. I think he works hard. He's a very talented guy, and his time may come. But going into this season, it's all about Jared Goff. That's what this franchise, it's all about him right now. Going
back to Sean McVay was interesting. I was at a couple of different camps trying to catch up with some players this summer. And Aaron Donald, obviously defensive player. Defensive players don't necessarily deal with the head coach that much, that they're with a defensive coordinator, but especially, anybody who's on the offensive side of the ball. And Aaron said it really struck him how much Sean McVay knows about both sides of the ball. Obviously, these guys know he's an offensive-minded coach, but Aaron said that he had a question about something, about another player on defense, and Sean started describing to him and explaining it to him, and Aaron said he was really kind of surprised, for lack of a better word, at how much the head coach knew about his specific position. Because as crazy as it might sound to some people, these coaches kind of know their position or their side of the ball, and that's why they hire great people around them to take care of, the nuances of maybe what they don't know.
That doesn't surprise me that he would say that, because, again, everything you hear about Sean McVay is that knowledge base, is that ability to bring it in an enthusiastic manner. So I don't think anyone questions that's been around this a little bit. The question, of course, is going to be, can he lead a team? on a game, game day? Can he manage the play calling? All those kinds of things, and those are going to be the big tests.
I've been a skeptic about the age thing, just knowing how young he is, that there's guys making millions of more dollars than him, a lot of guys with more NFL experience, whatnot. Talked to a couple players also at some of these camps, and they said it was kind of weird at first knowing how young their head coach was, but really it's all about how he's presented himself, and at no point have they looked and said, oh, this is kind of my buddy, my friend, my peer coaching the team.
Mm-hmm.
He asserts himself, and it's how he conducts the meetings that these guys have seemingly started to really kind of buy into what he has to offer.
There are some advantages to being his age, I think, in terms of dealing with the average age of this team.
He probably knows how to tweet, Instagram, Snapchat.
All of that. And it makes use of technology. That works to his advantage. But it comes down to, I think, there are going to be critical parts in every season for every team where a coach has to be able to command the room, command the locker room, whatever you want to say, and that's going to be the test for him. Obviously, the Rams have confidence that he can do that. The players have expressed confidence. But when it comes to those critical junctures, that's when you have to prove yourself, and that's when he's going to have to do it.
So out of training camp, how much do you think we'll see Sean McVay working specifically with Jared Goff?
I think you'll see it quite a bit. I mean, based on what we saw during mini camps, he's the play caller. He has obviously a long, or a relatively long for a young person's career track record working with quarterbacks. Most recently with Kirk Cousins, okay? You've got Matt LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, who's worked with Matt Ryan. Greg Olson, the quarterback's coach,
which is
has a long.
interesting because some of the comparisons for Jared Goff were his comp was like Matt Ryan. So it's interesting that Matt LaFleur's now Jared Goff's coach when he used to be with Matt Ryan.
Right.
And I have to say, being close to both of those quarterbacks at some point in my career, their bodies are rather similar. They kind of present themselves in a similar fashion. I don't know, as far as taking the comparison deeper than that, but there are some similarities.
Well, we'll see. I think we had a very small sample size, even though there are some people that have said already, Jared Goff is a bust. I think it's way too early to make that kind of an assessment, especially in the offense he was operating in last season with the personnel that was surrounding him last season. I think this is going to be a much better litmus test with a coach who's offensive-minded, a coordinator who's coming also from a very successful offense, a new left tackle that is proven in the NFL, and another veteran receiver. Now, there are still some areas of this offense that need to be shored up, but I think we're going to get a better sense of who Jared Goff is this season than we did last. Something
else to watch for at training camp, Todd Gurley. If you recall last season, Todd Gurley barely participated in training camp. He went through some non-contact drills. I think he maybe 1 or 2 days actually was hit a little bit, but he was basically in bubble wrap on the sideline, doing individual work for most of training camp. We all know how the season went for Todd Gurley, coming off Offensive Rookie of the Year. He did not rush for more than 1,000 yards. He didn't make it to 100 yards in a single game. How do you think they'll handle him during this training camp?
I think it will be much different. Jeff Fisher, as you mentioned, really didn't want to do anything that would jeopardize him. He ran maybe a handful of plays during the exhibition, or what is now the preseason. Yes.
LA Times Style Guide update. No LA Times exhibition games for our loyal readers. The LA Times will now be referring to them as preseason games. Yes. I wonder if Jeff Fisher will send you a text message saying, finally. I wouldn't be surprised if he does.
Well, we'll see. I would expect that Todd Gurley's workload in those situations will increase, not to expose him to injury because he's still going to be a vital piece of this offense, but I would expect that to increase just based on what happened last year and whether that had anything to do with it or not, his performance or lack of same. I don't know. What's your sense?
I would sense that Todd Gurley. Actually, I've been following him this summer on Instagram. Really interesting. You should follow him if you're not. Just every single day he's in the gym working out. I know all these players are. They're NFL players. That's their job. But it's morning, noon, and night with this guy, how much he seems to be working out. And I would think that after having the season he did last year, he's a competitor. He's going to want to come out here and prove that that was an anomaly, that that's not who he is. And I wouldn't be surprised if he says, no, let me get out there, let me practice more. So I'm sure there's going to be a compromise on both sides, how much he practices and how much he really is hit. But I think probably the competitor in him, you'd want to get out here and say, well, it didn't go great last season. Let's do the opposite this year.
I think you're right. I think we'll see more of him in the preseason. Mm-hmm. Not a lot. Again,
right?
They're going to keep him out of harm's way, but he's going to get some work. So when that season starts, when the Indianapolis Colts come to the Coliseum for that opener,
it's not like a warm up for him. Like he's ready. And last year, for better or worse, whether it was his fault or everyone's fault, he just wasn't ready. Mm-hmm. The offense wasn't ready to make him successful.
So what's your prediction for Todd Gurley this season?
I think he'll rush for more than 1,000 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. He'll have a few games over 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
With Sean McVay, this offense isn't going to be one-dimensional. Last year, everyone knew, just stop Todd Gurley. What else does this team have going for it? And kind of is exactly how it went down for them.
That's exactly how it played out. After that first game in San Francisco, it was obvious that was.
Oh, do you remember what a downer that was?
Well,
I remember the seafood paella made to order in that press box. The rest was so downhill so quickly.
Well, what it did is
Colin Kaepernick was taking a knee. Another player on the team was holding the flag with the vets or with the active military personnel. That just turned into such circus.
And it established, really, for other teams, the framework about how to beat the Rams. Mm-hmm. It was just right there. That was as clear as day. Load up, try and stop Gurley, and make someone else beat you. And the Rams just couldn't do that.
I'm already excited for that seafood paella again. It's so great up there. They make it to order. It's hot. It's fresh. You just got to know when to get in line. It's strategic. The Rams' defense last year was a real bright spot on an otherwise very grim, gray, gross season. I don't know how you say that any nicer. So Wade Phillips has still a lot to work with. They're going to change their defense. They're going to go from a 4-3 to a 3-4. Mm-hmm. Wade Phillips himself seems to be kind of a firecracker of a guy. Obviously, he's proven. He's got that Super Bowl a couple years ago in Denver. How do you think he's going to kind of affect these players on the defensive side?
I think he already has, just in terms of he comes in with so much credibility that there's instant respect. Mm-hmm. You're not going to question, I don't think, his track record and his ability to do things. The question will be, are they going to stay healthy? Is Aaron Donald going to be out there? Is he going to be distracted with this contract situation? It's an interesting scenario because he still has 2 years left on the deal, but he certainly, by any reasonable measure, has outperformed his rookie deal.
Right.
And the Rams have said they're in quote-unquote serious negotiations, but how compelled they feel to really get something done remains to be seen, because with a new coach, this cannot become a distraction.
Right.
And Aaron Donald, as a personality, is not someone that's going to be a distraction with his behavior, at least in terms of what we've been able to see. He's not a real outlandish personality. He's not going to be making, at least, by what we've seen, super bold statements. He's going to handle it in kind of a quiet manner. But regardless, if this becomes an issue going into the season, that's not going to play well for a team that's trying to come off a 4-12 season with a new coach and kind of a new attitude.
Right.
If that's dragging them down, you're only really, because Gurley's on the comeback trail, Goff is unproven, Aaron Donald is your one bona fide legitimate star. And if you have him unhappy and affecting everything else, that's not boding well.
The rest of the defense, Alec Ogletree obviously back there at linebacker. The secondary, Trumaine Johnson will be here with the franchise tag. This defense, I don't know, there still seems to be just kind of the secondary especially. You look at it and you have to wonder, can they improve there a bit, or is that a solid enough defense where they're going to come in and be able to produce the kind of play that I should say they did last season?
Mm-hmm. And this being the NFL and it being a business, contracts are going to play into this, possibly, right? Mm-hmm. Alec Ogletree, they've talked about he's due in line for an extension. He's in line for an extension. Well, now you've got the Aaron Donald situation. You had the Trumaine Johnson situation where they were not able to come to a long-term deal. So he's going to play on that near $17 million deal, one-year deal. Okay, but Alec Ogletree, I guess, if you're a good soldier or however you want to describe it, he's saying they'll get to me, whatever. But at a certain point, if you're him, you got to be saying, "What about me?"
Okay, so let's. We kind of had a segment here planned for let's get into the contracts. I went and spoke with Aaron Donald. You spoke with him through OTAs. You know, he wasn't made available. You did not speak with him, but you knew that was the situation while you were in Thousand Oaks. I spoke with him this summer, and we kind of kept going, pressing. There was a couple other reporters there, and Aaron really didn't want to say anything. And finally, he's like, you guys, this is a business. This is a business for me too, and you got to make sure you take care of yourself. Totally understandable. Totally get that. He's like, I have a couple daughters to feed. I have to look out for myself. Now, the interesting part, and he has 2 years. This is his 4th season. They've picked up his 5th season. Speaking to a couple people who cover other teams in the NFL, or even just looking at their situations, you don't have a lot of power when you're going into your 4th season. Going into your 5th season, you have a lot of power. Going into your 4th, the Rams have, like you mentioned, no real incentive to say, oh yeah, let's get this done. Like if you're the Rams, their best business decision is to see how he plays this season. But if you're Aaron Donald, you also know in the back pocket that this team really doesn't have a bona fide star. You're 3-time Pro Bowl athlete. And I think he has more bargaining power than, say, a defensive player for the Seattle Seahawks, who have a whole stable of great players on their defense. Aaron Donald is their shining star.
And he's going to liken himself, and I think probably accurately, to J.J. Watt. Or his agent is going to do this to J.J. Watt in his first few seasons with the Houston Texans. And they ended up doing a deal after his 3rd year. They didn't get it done, I think it was till the eve of his 4th season. But that's kind of what they're looking at in terms of this is a similar situation. This is a player that has outperformed his rookie contract. You want to lock him up. You do not want him to get away. You don't want him to get to free agency. You need to do it now. And we'll see.
What's your sense? Do you think they get a new deal, or do you think he's just going to have to play through this season? And it's a weird place to be in. It's a 4th season. It's
kind of a weird place to be, and because we've both talked about, he's the star. He's the star.
And whether or
do
not
you want your star?
Here's the thing. Okay, this is where it gets interesting, right? He is no doubt the star performer. Would you say he's anywhere near being the face of this franchise to the general public, to the fans, to football fans? Because he's not, like, J.J. Watt even seems to have this persona where he puts himself out there, and he puts. Aaron Donald is a quiet. I don't know him personally, but he almost seems a little bit introverted. He's just not this big splashy guy who's saying, "Make me the face."
Exactly. He'll do that when in terms of certain advertisements for the team and whatnot. But I don't think he jumps at the chance. He just wants to play. He wants to be great. He wants to play, and he wants to be compensated. So you're right. He's not. I don't think he has that larger than life personality
but if
of
you're
a
looking
Watt.
at this roster, you must have him.
And it just strikes me that he has so much respect in the locker room because of his work ethic and because of his performance that. Do you really want that guy unhappy? But
you also set the precedent. It's a weird. I don't know if you can then say to Alec Ogletree, "Well, you're not Aaron Donald."
No, but Ogletree, we've already passed that because this isn't Ogletree's 3rd year. This is just a player that has performed well, stepped in last year, did a nice job at middle linebacker. That's kind of a different situation. The kinds of guys that come around that are going to do this after their 3rd year, that are going to be 3-time Pro Bowlers in their first, that's going to be rare. So it's a unique situation. And the fact that this isn't a team with a superstar quarterback and a superstar wide receiver, he's your guy.
He is your guy.
So if you don't take care of him and your team starts tanking or doing well, it's just not a good mix.
No.
Not a good mix.
Trumaine Johnson, we're watching the deadline come, watch the deadline go. He's franchise tag, 1-year deal that he'll be working on. Why do you think that is?
It's hard to say, Lindsey, I think definitively, in terms of like assigning blame, because I don't know if there is any blame. You know, I think the Rams throughout the process kept saying, we'll see if he's a good fit. We'll see if he's the right fit. Well, in terms of the way it came out, you'd sit there and go, well, they just determined he's not going to fit. But there's other elements, and some of them might be on, you know, in Tremaine's camp as well. He may look at it as, it's a better deal for me. I've made, you know, nearly $31 million. I'll have made nearly $31 million over the last 2 years, and now I can become a free agent in a market that keeps going up. So
$31 million.
Yeah, I don't know that
years.
anyone really is a loser in this deal. You know, the Rams, although if Trumaine Johnson performs really well and leaves as a free agent and the Rams are left with nothing, then, you know, that didn't work out too well, especially in light of the fact that they let Janoris Jenkins go a few years ago, and he's played well for the New York Giants. So
right. Free agents, the Rams added a few. They had a chance to work out during, you know, OTAs and whatnot. Two guys that I know I'm particularly going to kind of key in on would be Andrew Whitworth. Greg Robinson, he's gone. They brought in a stable veteran on that offensive line. He's obviously an older player, but if anything is going to help Todd Gurley start running, it's going to be having a stable offensive line. And then also my eye on Robert Woods. Everyone's familiar with him from USC. Really never was the shining star in Buffalo, but seemed to be a consistent guy. The Rams need some consistency at receiver for Jared Goff, and especially after last season where there were so many drops and really no guy emerged as that dependable, you know, third down, get him the ball, you know, if it's a deep situation. So I think the Rams really need a dependable receiver.
Andrew Whitworth at left tackle, let's start there. He's going to give them a dependable all-pro presence, not only for Gurley, but really to protect Jared Goff, who was sacked like 26 times or something in his starts. So it's going to give Jared Goff confidence. The question about Whitworth, of course, in the short term, it looks like it was probably a good deal, a great pickup, you know, for a team in need of a left tackle. But he's not the long-term solution at 35, 36 years old.
I can't believe he's still walking around. I mean, that's a lot of years and a lot of hard banging on your body. Yeah,
he's talked about how he's changed kind of his fitness regimen and whatnot, and
yoga. I mean, right? He said there's a lot of yoga in there.
He's a really big guy. He's a really wide body to get around. So maybe he continues to perform at an all-pro level. Maybe he's just going to be serviceable. Who knows? But it's going to be an upgrade. Whatever it is, it's going to be an upgrade over what the Rams have had at left tackle the last few seasons. Robert Woods, I agree with you to this point. And I think that this was some of the perception by people who watched what the Rams did. They're sitting there questioning, going, well, okay, is it really an upgrade over what you had in Kenny Britt? Now, we're talking about in terms of pure numbers, Kenny Britt was a 1,000-yard receiver. In terms of some of the other issues, in terms of drops, in terms of dependability, in terms of running routes, there will be some people that will say Robert Woods is the guy you want because he's not going to make any mistakes. Of course he does, but he's not going to make as many as maybe another receiver does. But did they really upgrade in terms of getting a guy that's going to be a number one?
They didn't get a flashy guy who's...
No. And maybe in Sean McVay's system, you don't need a so-called designated number one, that there's going to be enough balls flying around there for all those receivers that Woods will be able to be very productive. And then, of course, the big question mark with the receiving core is Tavon Austin. You know, signed that huge extension last year. Underperformed in terms of, I think, for that contract. Some people would say, well, he was a victim of the offensive philosophy and whatnot. Well, now you have a head coach and coordinator that know how to get receivers involved. And Tavon Austin sat out the mini camp and organized team activities following wrist surgery. That will be something to keep an eye on during training camp as well, how healthy he is, and whether he can become a little bit of a vertical threat, not just a horizontal guy.
He's always just skipping ahead on the rundown. He's always skipping ahead on the rundown. That's okay. Going back just a little bit to free agents, is there anybody else that you think are really going to make an immediate impact that the Rams acquired?
I think, John Sullivan, the center, is a little bit under the radar just because of the position and because he was injured a couple years ago and then was a backup last year. But if he can stay healthy, if he can provide them some consistency at center, that is going to go a long way with Whitworth. But it remains to be seen if he can stay healthy. And then I think the other one, Kayvon Webster, who played behind some All-Pros in Denver for a number of years, never really got an opportunity to start. Well, he's going to have an opportunity to compete to start opposite Trumaine Johnson. And Wade Phillips obviously likes what he saw in him. He's got him here. And Connor Barwin, who came in, from the Eagles, is back into a pass rushing situation.
Reunited with
Wade Phillips as well. So we'll see. All those kinds of things with Robert Quinn now, kind of playing with a stand-up position as a linebacker could help the Rams. If all those things, start clicking and Wade Phillips gets them going, then it could be a very dynamic defense.
Going back to the draft, the Rams did not have a first-round pick after that big trade that they made to go up and get Jared Goff, but they did pick up a handful of picks, really, in the next few rounds. They traded back and still were able to get the guys they wanted, they said. I'm so surprised. They released this preseason depth chart, and Cooper Kupp, the receiver from Eastern Washington, is listed as a starter. That surprised me. But then again, you think of the receiving core, and you have Pharaoh Cooper, who was in and out of injuries and didn't necessarily stand out last year, and then Nelson Spruce, who was out for the entire season. So after Tavon Austin and Robert Woods, they really need a bunch of young guys to step up. And Cooper Kupp, right now, seems to have earned that spot.
He came in with a reputation for being a guy that was very prepared, and
from an FCS school. I mean, this is kind of wild. You never know where you're going to find these guys, but he went to Eastern Washington, the red turf.
Caught a lot of footballs there, though, and he comes in. He showed in the rookie camp. He showed in the mini camps throughout organized team activities that he was capable of grasping the offense quickly and giving them a different look. And being a dependable guy. Now, he hasn't played in an NFL game yet. We don't know, but all indications is that he's a guy that will be able to contribute immediately. And then the other thing about the receiving core, Mike Thomas, you mentioned Pharaoh Cooper from last year's class. Mike Thomas looked like he took a major step, during the offseason.
Remember Mike Thomas was the one who was having a hard time catching that football for a long time.
I think he made huge strides during the offseason, especially with Austin out. He got some opportunities to do things, and then he's hit with a 4-game suspension, for violating the league's performance-enhancing substance policy. So how that affects the Rams' depth chart and how it affects his ability, to make the team, to stay on the team, remains to be seen.
Gerald Everett was the first player the Rams selected in the draft, a tight end. He's listed as a key contributor. I know when they selected him, Gary and I were just keeping it real here, looked at each other and went, who? And I don't think we were the only media members in a room full of media who asked the same question. Gary, you saw him at OTAs. What did you see from him?
He looks like a very... he's got good size, good skills, good speed. Looked like he could catch the ball pretty consistently. And he's fortunate for him that he's coming to a team with a coach that utilizes the tight end very heavily in the offense. And also he's joining a roster with other inexperienced tight ends. Tyler Higbee is the most experienced guy if you consider Corey Harkey more of
Tyler Higbee.
Harkey more of a fullback and special teams guy. Higbee, who had a good training camp last year and then just kind of didn't really play up to that early billing. He's listed as a starter, and Tamarick Hemingway, also from last year's class, is on the roster as a tight end. So it's not a real experienced position group, and so he should have plenty of opportunity.
Other than a few veterans who are kind of aging rapidly, this is, again, a very young roster. That's just kind of the takeaway here.
The NFL, if you look at that roster every year, it's turning over. I remember back at the owners' meetings, people were asking Jack Del Rio, the Oakland Raiders coach, about how the imminent move to Las Vegas in a few years is going to affect his team or could affect his team. And his answer was like, look at the roster. it's debatable how many of the guys on this year's squad will even be there. So it's constantly churning, and it kind of comes full circle. We get back to contracts and everything and why guys want to make the money they can when they can, because the average career in the NFL is so short that you're generally going to have a very young team. So we'll see if Sean McVay can motivate these guys to play above that or past their experience level.
We're going to get Gary's first on the fence answer of the season. Gary, if you had to pick one rookie that you think is going to surprise people, or not even surprise people, but really have a standout season, who do you think it's going to be?
Well, I think Kupp is going to be the most high profile. I think if he stays healthy, he's going to have opportunities in McVay's offense. I think it kind of lends itself to his skill set. He's going to be a guy that Jared Goff is going to be able to find, who's going to get open along with Robert Woods and Austin and whoever else they're putting out there. So I think he's the guy. I think John Johnson, the defensive back from Boston College, I don't necessarily see him stepping into a super kind of like starring role or necessarily even a starting role, but he strikes me as a guy that could be very valuable in that safety rotation and also on special teams.
Already touched on this a little bit, but it's hard to pin this on a few players when you're coming off a 4-12 season. Does it seem like yesterday, or does it seem like a long time ago, the 4-12 season? That's a real question.
It doesn't seem like that long ago. The NFL, the way it's structured, just almost as a year-round schedule. It doesn't seem that long ago, but a lot has transpired, in terms of free agency and the draft and everything else.
It seems like a lot's changed.
The coaching staff has turned over. So it's not that far removed from when it actually happened, but because so many of the people that were involved, at least in last season, are no longer here, it seems like it might be a fresh start.
So it's tough to ask this question, and it's tough to come up with an answer, but we're going to try pin down an answer. Who needs to improve the most after a 4-12 season? Let's go through some individuals who are capable of performing at a higher level than what they did. I'm going to throw one out. It's kind of easy. Todd Gurley needs to perform better.
Yeah. No question.
No question. Gary's got to add nothing here.
No, I mean, it's like for fans in LA, for even people like us that were not covering the NFL 2 years ago, right? We can watch highlights. We can see what Todd Gurley did as a rookie, but for what we've seen, it just hasn't been there, right? I didn't get it. Going back to training camp because he didn't get a lot of opportunities, not in the exhibition season or preseason, and certainly not in the season. So I think there's some mystery. He came here with a lot of buildup, with a national television commercial, with some opportunities to really capitalize on that rookie season, and it just didn't go his way.
It fell flat.
So they need him to be better. Of course, to me, the key is Jared Goff. It's all about Jared Goff. If Jared Goff plays better, they're going to be better. Yeah. They just are. And
of course, I mean, it all starts and ends with the quarterback.
In the NFL,
And it's funny, when I was thinking of this, talking about this, Jared Goff, I don't want to say that I gave him a pass, but I don't even know that he necessarily came into my orbit because we don't know what he's really capable of. He hasn't done it before. I thought of guys who's been here, who's done it before, and then who did you just expect more out of? Now, Jared Goff, it'd be fair to say you expect more out of him, at least to win a football game after being the #1 pick, after they gave up so much. But you also, it's tough to know what Jared Goff was kind of working with behind the scenes, how much coaching he was receiving, how prepared he truly was to be thrown into what was already a dumpster fire a little bit, maybe. Sorry, tire fire. I don't know what's worse. What's better?
I don't think and we said this at the top, or at least I just didn't get an accurate sense of who he is. I will give him credit for having endured what happened last season in terms of when he was playing, some of the things that went on. And granted, he made his share of mistakes.
Absolutely.
He made plenty of mistakes, but he also had some flashes. And as a rookie quarterback on a bad team,
you know
I don't know how you can just write him off at this point.
I was actually watching the game when the Rams were in New Orleans. I was at home watching on television, and I just remember so many passes bouncing off the numbers, off the chests of his receivers, of a couple tight ends. And it's like, as a rookie playing in the, Superdome, thank you. I don't think you could have asked for much more from him. And it just, nothing went his way that day.
Well, he had that first half, if I'm not mistaken. He did pretty well.
Yeah.
Austin had a nice catch.
Yeah.
He looked like he was getting it. And of course, just like a Major League Baseball player, they're going to make adjustments to you when you're successful. Right. The NFL, they do the same thing. But by the time he got into the season, right,
things were lost,
or they were certainly heading towards
a downward
spiral. I think this is going to be a much better indication of who Jared Goff is, how much he's improved, and he's going to set the course for this team. If he's better, this team is going to be better.
You already touched on it, but Tavon Austin, he signed that big contract extension last season. That was a big moment for the Rams. It was our first preseason covering the team. So you kind of got a sense of how excited the entire organization was, and yet Tavon also was a player who you thought signed this big contract, seemed to be this Mr. kind of do-it-all, all-purpose offensive player, and it, once again, also just fell flat. And so I think he's going to be a guy this season. It's going to be really interesting to see how Sean McVay uses him. First of all, where he lines up, how he lines up, and then also if he can just perform at a higher level.
That contract, a lot of people raise their eyebrows.
Did you raise your eyebrows?
Well, I was still learning the league and the NFL and the cost structure and contracts, but based on his production, and what the market was and what the market's going to be, a lot of people were like, wow, they really overspent. Now, the way that contract is structured, the Rams have some flexibility if he doesn't perform, but there's no question in terms of talking about how the success rides with Goff, they're going to need Austin to step up and play better, to catch more balls, he had some drops. He's got to, I think, prove to be more than what he has shown so far. And McVay is noted as an offensive guy. We'll see if he can work some of that magic that he worked in Washington with their passing game.
Tavon Austin's as athletic as any player you'll see out there. He's undersized, but we should talk about just fast, and he's just deceiving, I think. I mean, when I stand next to him, I'm as big as him. I might be bigger. I don't know. I've been on a little bit of a diet recently, so let's hope I'm not. But he's really deceiving, and then you watch him go. So it's how Sean McVay chooses to use him is going to be really intriguing.
And he will be motivated, just like Todd Gurley, coming off that season, that impression. He's a very proud guy. I'm sure he's been working like crazy so that when he comes out, he can prove everyone wrong and prove he was worthy of that contract. But this is kind of a show-me business, and so we'll see if he can.
Not here for a good time, you're here for showtime, right, Gary? So we kind of already touched on the depth chart. No real shock, from the defensive side of the ball. Cooper Kupp, to me, was the biggest surprise. But, you kind of take an early look at the depth chart. Anything stand out to you?
Not really. I mean, I think the defense will be, since Wade Phillips calls it a hybrid, it'll be interesting to see who lines up, in front with Aaron Donald. The secondary, to me, remains an issue in terms of really finding someone that's.
You look at the position groups, and we have questions about receiver, a few questions about the offensive line, but when I look at the secondary, it doesn't strike me as like, wow.
No, they're making a move with LaMarcus Joyner, moving him from a slot corner back to safety to take advantage of some of his skills. Maurice Alexander moves from free safety to the strong position. But I think that cornerback spot opposite Trumaine Johnson is going to be the one that's going to be most notable, just because you've got E.J. Gaines, who had a good season a few seasons ago, but was injured last year, really never got it going. Kayvon Webster is coming in. and regarded as a solid guy by Wade Phillips, but we haven't seen if he's capable of holding down a starting job.
It's going to be interesting, and that, they released some projected starters. I'd imagine there will be some switches through training camp, but if nothing else, somebody's always bound to get injured, and they're not going to make it through training camp. Usually they don't make it through unscathed. Let's just do a quick injury update while we're at it. I know, right? You're like, oh gosh, back from summer vacation, you're hitting me with the details. But Tavon Austin, he was injured and started coming back a little bit during OTAs. That was a wrist injury?
Correct. He had wrist surgery for an issue. He said he couldn't specify when it happened, if it was something that just built up or what happened. But the fact is, he was out there running routes, catching tennis balls, and trying to stay in shape. So we'll see. Nelson
Spruce sat out all of last season. He's been in all these videos right alongside Todd Gurley. It looks like Todd Gurley's workout partners are Nelson and Tyler Higbee. You can find a lot out on Instagram, you guys. Also, Gary is now on Instagram if you want to follow him. LA Times Klein. He is consistent, his screen name everywhere. So Nelson Spruce, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he works himself into the offense if he's able to this season.
Well, he was Cooper Kupp last season, really, as a free agent. A guy who came from a program that caught a lot of passes, was regarded as a sure-handed guy, had the nice performance in the first preseason game against Dallas, and then was hurt the rest of the season. So we'll see. We never really saw him come back, and they never put him on waivers because they were afraid that someone would snag him.
Yeah.
But again, undrafted free agent, if he finds a roster spot, he needs to produce.
Any other injuries that we should be aware of? I don't know that there are right now going into training camp. Everyone seemed pretty healthy.
I mean, Maurice Alexander really was limited, I think, during the latter stages of OTAs and minicamp. Dunbar, the new backup running back, they kind of held him out a little bit too. But you never know. You look at kind of as these teams are reporting for training camp and you see the transaction wire and different guys are on the physically unable to perform list. We'll see if the Rams, anyone shows up that starts out that way.
I don't know why Gary and I decided, well, it's not really Gary's fault, blame me for this one, decided to bury the lead because this is all anyone ever wants to talk about are uniforms. The Rams have a new look this season. That helmet, it's going to be blue and white. Same look like jersey top, but you know what? The people at Nike, they can be better. They can be better than this because the blue and white pants that the Rams will be wearing this season, the blue in the stripe of the pants doesn't match the navy blue in the jersey. Like, they are wearing so many different tones of navy blue. It makes me really angry. And it does. It's just a little bit. It's a little. I would rather they have just kept their old uniforms that matched. Gary, there's nothing worse than two shades of navy blue that don't match.
Well, see,
and if it's all Nike, like, can't Nike match the navy blues?
Well, I think the Rams maybe put Nike in a tough position because that fans want them to just trash the St. Louis uniform entirely.
Yeah. Have you seen it? Have you seen it? Have you?
I have not examined. I have not examined the shades that closely.
Okay, I'm pulling up Jared Goff's Instagram right now, and you're going to take a look. Look at this. It's like cadet blue and navy blue. Do you see the difference?
I guess it's pretty subtle, but you're talking to someone whose palette is black, white, and gray.
And you guys want to know? I was in the office at the LA Times. I only make a few appearances a year. I got to keep it sporadic and fresh around there. And I had to tell the guys in the office why it is that Gary's palette is gray, black, and like white, and maybe you don't wear navy blue, but
not very often.
No, because that'd be Rams colors.
That's right.
Gary wears that palette in large part because he never wants to show any sort of like fandom. He doesn't want to.
It's a good thing I don't cover the Raiders, right?
Well, it's a good
I'd
thing.
Be lost. You'd
have to wear red every day. Gary does not want to wear any team colors. He wants to show no affiliation. He doesn't want anyone to think he's a fan or anything, which I get and I admire and I respect. But Gary is the most muted colored person ever. And sometimes when I show up to work, if I decide to be bright today, he'll look at me like, Oh, you cheering for someone? No, I can't wear black every day. It's sad, it's depressing, and we live in Southern California.
Well, that being said, so you this is an interesting breakdown of the various hues of blue.
They're hues of blue, like the Crayola box. You guys go get your 99 colors and figure it out. The pants are like this kind of like cadet blue. Almost not like, they're not navy. It's like, not sailor blue. It'd be like, the cadet, like in the Marines, they kind of have that lighter navy blue tone in the stripes. I think I'm thinking of that right. The top is a dark navy blue in the shoulder pad area. And then the helmet is a very, very deep navy blue.
I like
the helmet matches the socks. The pants match nothing. And the jerseys, you can get away with. But you can't get away with the jersey unless you get the pants to match. This is just a mess.
Now, do the Rams have a stylist? Have you ever looked at their directory? Do they have a clothing stylist?
I haven't looked at the directory, but I think Nike can be better. I think Nike can match the navy blue in the pants to the navy blue in the top.
That will be the challenge. Now, the other thing about
that's not the challenge. These are the uniforms. This is what they're all wearing.
But the thing about these uniforms, let's look. This is short term, right?
Yes.
I know we were going to get to this, so this is a nice segue into the fact.
But hold on.
What?
Do you see how these blues, they're not even close to matching?
You know what? This is the first time I've really taken a hard look at that. That will be, I guess, one of my assignments here during the preseason is to make sure, and I'm sure you'll be chronicling it, right? As part of your story on Instagram. I'm not going to be the
fashion critic. I mean, we all know that I have my own fashion problems.
What's that? What fashion problems are those?
Well, that gets really personal. I mean, you guys
this is a podcast. Come on.
Everyone has that moment in their life when they just realize they need a different jean size, okay? Anyway. Is it time for... Wait, we're getting to the stadium. No.
Well, here's the thing.
Also, it's time for our preseason diet. We should tell everyone that Gary and
training
camp diets.
Absolutely.
We go green and we go hard. We are ready for the season.
You got to be ready for the season. The thing about the uniforms is with the stadium, with the Rams not getting into their new stadium, right? Projected for 2019, now it's been pushed back.
Because of the rain. Quote unquote, because of the rain.
To 2020. The fans, of course, what about those? What about that rebrand?
Uniforms?
What about that stadium? And so they've kind of vacillated a little bit on that. They've said they may announce something towards the end of the year or whatnot on terms of what's going to happen with the uniforms, because the plan originally was to have a new look going into that new stadium in 2019. Well, now, do you roll it out in 2019 or do you push it back?
We better do some investigative journalism on this and find out the answer. We can write every story this year, but if we write about when those jerseys are going to make their debut, it's going to be the most clicked on thing in the LA Times. All right, so the stadium in 2020, we're approaching an hour on the podcast, and I know Gary at least has a job to do. This is actually my job. So let's get to some questions sent in via Twitter. This is always a fun part of the podcast. David Rodriguez asks, regarding reports that Goff is grasping the offense easily this time around, is it due to last year's learning curve or a better playbook? That's something we're going to have to wait to ask Jared Goff. But also regarding reports, I mean, so many things get reported in the summertime, and who knows, kind of where some of that stuff comes from. A lot of it's just fodder. People need to fill space, fill content, fill programs.
And let's think about it. Jared Goff came in last year after all of that pre-draft process that goes on. He ends up as the number one pick, all that attention. He came into a system that obviously was not productive. Even going in, they were the worst offense the year before. They're the worst offense again. So he's got a year of experience. He's had an entire off season to study this playbook. These guys catch on, right?
Yeah.
He's commanding the offense.
He went to California. He's really smart.
Well, I don't put too much stock in where a guy goes to school and what he's capable of.
Gary,
Come on,
you have a son that goes to Cal.
I do.
You know what kind of academic rigors they go through.
I've also been around college sports, and not everyone is on the same academic level, but that's not even a reflection to me on what they're capable of doing in terms of playing their sport, absorbing a playbook, and whatnot.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
I know you are. I know. But I think Jared Goff is going to be much better prepared. He's in a system that, if you look at the track record, if you look at, it's had success. This isn't the worst offense. He stepped into a team that had the worst offense in the NFL the year before he got there. He's stepping into a team that had the worst offense, but with a coach that had one of the premier passing games in the NFL. Right. So he's set up for success.
Gary, I'm eager to see what Jared Goff can do.
I bet you that
Sean McVay is anxious. Get back to us. Let us know if y'all know the difference.
Very, very, very good wordplay there. Excellent.
Gabe Hernandez asks, you like that? Says, I'm ready for some football. Cooper Kupp, you guys expect him to start, or is he going to play slot, or is Tavon? Well, I think we've kind of touched on that. Cooper's going to play a role.
They're all going to play. I think this is an offense that's going to take advantage of as many players as Sean McVay has at his disposal. So I would expect that Kupp's going to be heavily involved. Austin will be heavily involved. Robert Woods will be heavily involved, and there will be other guys as well. It's not just going to be limited to a couple players.
Chris Foster, our former coworker at the Los Angeles Times, asks us an interesting question, Chris. Why was Goff left off of the Southern California News Group? That's not the Los Angeles Times, Chris. They're 50 most powerful sports people. Yet Rivers Darnold, that'd be Sam Darnold of USC, and Josh Rosen of UCLA made it. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really interesting question, and I think that's actually a great point of conversation. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't Jared Goff? First of all, I think 50 in LA, Jared Goff should make, but also, you know what? Jared Goff didn't do anything as a rookie. He. I don't know, maybe I spent too much time at the beach, not enough time kind of in the LA life, but to me, he's not like a figure in LA that stands out. Philip Rivers brings a lot of credibility, a lot of, fandemonium around him. He's a pretty powerful quarterback in the NFL. Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, born and bred in LA, came up as kind of a kid to watch for. Sam Darnold took the Trojans to the Rose Bowl. So it doesn't shock me that Jared Goff's not mentioned in them. He hasn't done anything in LA.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what their criteria was in terms of what, powerful, what that encompassed. But if you've got 50 slots, and you've got all the different sports, professional and college sports in LA. Like you said, I just think Jared Goff to this point, high profile as the number one pick in the draft, but in terms of really moving the needle, and even getting people really talking. I mean, Josh Rosen has done that with what he did his freshman year, and with some of the controversy, or at least the way the things that have surrounded him. Darnold, as you mentioned, high profile, and Chris, a fellow San Clemente high alumna.
Oh, don't get them started. The San Clemente people, they sure are supportive, but they never stop.
And Philip Rivers, a proven veteron. So
okay,
we'll have to ask our colleagues at the Southern California News Group.
We know you're listening. Halo at Mighty Halos asks, how much better is the Rams receiving core? Last year's crew was the worst I've seen in my lifetime.
I don't know.
We're going to have to wait and see, I think. I hate to be... that is the most Gary Klein answer I could ever give. But it's really hard to predict. We have to wait and see.
Totally have to wait to see. Because we saw what Tavon Austin did. We know what he's done in the past when he was with the St. Louis Rams. And, regardless of how you feel about Kenny Britt, there was some production there. So Robert Woods is going to have to step up. And
whenever Gary mentions Kenny Britt, he kind of gets this funny look on his face because he knows I was a little bit critical of Kenny Britt. Kenny Britt was a personality.
He was a personality, a veteran, a presence in that locker room, and part of the reason that the Rams decided to let him go, I think, was that they wanted a change in their culture in the locker room. That's for better or worse.
Yes.
And I think Sean McVay was intent.
I think they were trying to go for the better part. They were trying to make it for better.
for a different, a different vibe. They wanted a different vibe in the locker room, and I think Robert Woods is a guy that, in terms of their research and whatnot, they feel is going to bring the vibe.
Also, Robert Woods on his Instagram just got engaged down in Turks and Caicos.
Congratulations,
Robert. Nothing says let's go to training camp like getting engaged. Adam Edwards asks, how do you see Rams working in John Johnson? You mentioned John Johnson. Not much has been said about him.
No, I think most of the focus has been on those receivers. But John Johnson, he has some versatility. He played cornerback in college. He played safety. I think he has talked about being versatile enough to play both safety spots. And so we'll see. Again, I think it goes back to Wade Phillips is a guy that seems to develop some pretty good defensive players. Kayvon Webster, as an example. I don't know if maybe John Johnson becomes the Rams' Kayvon Webster in the role he played with Denver. I know John Fossil, the special teams coach. Your
fave.
Yeah, is
what was that? What was that? The Stone Cutters
Parable.
Oh,
We'll be looking forward to the one day that they make John Fossil available during training camp, and I'll have to ask him about the Stonecutters Parable. Just to get
it in there. Tim asks at TJW13 asks, what will the Rams be doing to make the in-game fan experience better for their season ticket holders? That's a really specific question that I truthfully don't have the answer to. Gary, do you have one specifically?
Well, it's funny because I think some of the spin, from the Rams was that they were reducing the number of season tickets or whatever.
What do you mean spin? As he air quotes some of the spin from the Rams.
They were reducing the number of tickets they were going to make available to make the fan experience better. That's kind of some of the narrative.
Because they couldn't sell them all.
And that's some of the narrative. So we'll see. By making it a little bit more intimate, instead of 90,000 or 80,000, they have a number in mind. But the other thing is, and we don't really experience this because we're up in the press box, working during halftime, and we're not having to run out to try and get food at the concession stands. But there were some issues last year that they think they have ironed out that are going to be better this season. Like anything, okay. The Rams should be criticized for mistakes that were made last year on different levels, but they had a year to kind of work it out. So let's see what happens this year.
Every new business, and granted it's an NFL franchise, they're only moving, but any new business and any new location has kinks to work out. That's fair.
So we'll see how they come back. The one thing the Rams will not be able to change, though, is the Coliseum.
Yeah.
And that is, for a lot of people, that's a non-starter. Or they tried it last year. They tried it last year, and
it won't go back.
And it's kind of like, you know what? They're just not going to do it. As much as it's a hallowed place, there are people that's the only place they'd like to see football played in, and it's wonderful. But for certain fans and a certain experience,
a lot of the NFL
not the
fans
greatest, not the best,
not willing to go back to that tradition of old school. And if training camp's any indication, what we see out here, last year people were burning in the sun out here. People wanted a beer. They made those amenities available. I mean, just to have shade. I know we don't have shade. You get some reporter shade. But they've heard the feedback and they've implemented some changes. So I think they are willing to change and willing to try their hardest to accommodate fans and make it a better experience. Doug Frierson. Oh, Doug, this is the best question. Here we go again, he says. What would you and other experts, the only other experts right here are Gary and myself, consider a successful first year for the new staff? I say 9-7 reaches that level. Doug, I think a successful first year, first of all, you just got to be better than 4-12. It's hard to put a number on it. Gary, you're rubbing off on me so much. It's hard to put a number on it, but yeah, I would say that's fair. What do you say, 9-7? Oh my
God! If they went 9-7, that would be a smashing.
Sorry, a bug just landed on me.
I think those were butterflies.
I thought maybe it was a bee. I don't know. I looked quick.
9-7? Are you kidding me? That would be regarded as a smashing success. 8-8 would be huge.
I think 7-9.
Some people wouldn't be happy with 7-9, but coming off a 4-12 season,
I think 7-9's fair.
Yeah. So,
you think 7-9's fair?
I think 7-9's fair.
Anything lower than 7-9?
I think it just depends how they play. I mean, ultimately, it is your record. You are what you are, but I think it's going to depend on how they look, how they go about it, and whether people can be optimistic that after going through it one year that McVay can make it better.
Okay. Let's see. Flipper Anderson, not the Flipper Anderson, but he calls himself Flipper Anderson on Twitter. Says a Rams fan blog claims that the Rams are practicing much less than last year. Is this true?
Much less in terms of time on the field during their practices. I would say during OTAs and during they canceled the last day of mini camp, which I don't think is that uncommon for coaches to do. I don't think they're practicing any less. Didn't seem like it to me. I mean, there were some days where practices seemed a little bit briefer, but there were other days where they just kept going. So I think it all kind of balances out.
In the wash,
my sense is with Sean McVay and his staff, you're a new staff, you're going to take advantage of every minute that you have. But for some coaches, especially the newer age coaches, it's not always more is better.
Yeah,
it's like maybe you spend that
work
time
smarter, not harder.
Right, and also taking advantage of different, advances in technology and things that can help people learn and grasp things and practice. So, I don't know. I guess that's the eternal debate, especially when you get older players out here. Mm-hmm. The Rams had an event in the off season where they had alumni come back. And clearly, the guys that played in another era that were used to doing it a certain way, that's the formula for success for them, and they want to see more, and then others will say, hey, look, times have changed. There's a better way to do it. So, I think unless you're successful, you're always going to be criticized.
Yeah.
Unless you're the New England Patriots who get criticized too, but unless you have a system that is consistently on point, people are going to say you're not doing enough of something.
Cesar Gonzalez asks, when will the Rams go back to St. Louis? Cesar, come on. Eric Litzer asks, it's all about the trenches. How does the new offensive line coach get this unit elite with most of the same pieces? Well, the big piece is Andrew Whitworth. That's a big different piece, and then another piece is that they shipped Greg Robinson off.
Mm-hmm. And they're switching around on the right side. Jamon Brown, they're moving him out to right tackle, which is the position he played in college. Moving another guy inside. So I think Aaron Cromer is a guy that has had success as an offensive line coach. The Buffalo Bills certainly had a great rushing game. LaShawn McCoy has a lot to do with that, but he needs a good offensive line too, and they performed well. So we'll see. I mean, let's put it this way. They're not going to be any worse than they were last year. So any improvement is going to be a step up. And when you're adding a Pro Bowl guy like Andrew Whitworth, and you're eliminating guys that struggled like Greg Robinson, if you can stay healthy, and that's tough to do in the NFL, it stands to reason that you're going to be better. Yeah. I mean, even a guy just like Roger Saffold, plays left guard. He's not going to be concerned, at least the Rams hope, about moving all over the place to play left tackle and on the right side. He's got one spot, a veteran presence at left guard next to a veteran guy at left tackle. You got to feel pretty good about that if you're Jared Goff.
Better than you did last year.
Yes. And if your quarterback's confident, then he's going to play better.
All right, we're almost wrapped up here. Frank, I hope I say your last name correct. Frank Fidel. You think Mike Thomas cost himself a roster spot after his 4-game suspension? That's a great question. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so, but you never know if someone really emerges or how it kind of goes down.
When you open the door for someone, when you open the door for someone else, especially in this business, someone is right there ready to take it and perform and do well and make you an afterthought. And that's the thing about those kinds of instances and incidents that happen. It's not necessarily what you did, although that has it's the repercussions that give someone else an opportunity, and it can be over so quick. So he didn't do himself any favors by putting himself in that situation.
Final question: Matt Park asks, which of the drafted rookies is most likely to have a Rookie of the Year caliber season? I'm gonna throw my name in the hat for Cooper Kupp
as a Rookie of the Year candidate, huh?
What other rookies would you pick?
Well, they spent their Draft capital. They spent their draft capital on a tight end.
Jared. Well, yeah, they did. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, he was their first pick.
Well, I mean, did they kind of spend their draft capital on Jared Goff last year?
Yes, they did. But what they did have this year, they went for a tight end.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, a tight end under the radar who they think can contribute. And so
But you wouldn't pick him for the Rookie of the Year.
Well, the way Sean McVay uses tight ends, who knows?
So is that what if you had to pick?
I mean, in terms of...
If you had to pick... If you had to pick one.
If I had to pick one, jeez. Well...
Gary, you have to pick one.
Oh, my gosh.
No one's going to remember this. It's a podcast that we're taping in July. You have to pick one.
All right, I'm going with the tight end.
Going Gerald Everett.
I'm going with Gerald Everett
All
because
right. That was like pulling teeth. My goodness. I'm getting hungry, and you make me pull your teeth to get an answer about a Rookie of the Year from a Twitter question? My gosh.
Hey, we take these things seriously. At least I do.
I don't know what that means. I take the Fearsome Twosome podcast so seriously. So seriously, in fact, that I know that an hour and 10 minutes, nobody wants to listen to this anymore. One thing we didn't get to, All or Nothing. I know I spent part of my summer binge watching it. I know you did too. We'll talk about that on the next podcast. As always, we also didn't talk about your summer and your hikes. There's just so much we didn't get to, but that's okay. We have an entire season of podcasts, whether people choose to listen to them or not. It's going to be great.
They'll be listening.
Follow Gary on Twitter and Instagram.
And follow Lindsey.
Wait, I was just going to give them your screen name.
Okay,
Gary always interrupts.
Easy.
He's
pretty easy.
LA Times Klein. That's Klein. LA Times Klein. That's Gary Klein. Okay, now, you can plug mine if you want.
Okay, but see, here's the thing. I know it's at Lindsey Thiry on Twitter.
It's also that on Instagram.
Oh, see? Wait a minute. No, I haven't.
Your kids set your Instagram up and they didn't follow me?
No, actually they did.
I am going for them.
Actually they did, but it's funny because
your kids set up your Instagram and they didn't follow me?
No. Actually, you were one of the first follows.
And then they unfollowed me?
No, but I don't know what I didn't know your screen name was the same. And you made it sound like, he's got the same screen name on everything. Well, that's what you had too.
Yeah, because mine's my name.
Oh God.
Camp opens Saturday. If all goes well, this is going on live on the LA Times on Wednesday. Anything else, Gary, that you want to add as we sit here on a beautiful sunny day at UC Irvine?
All I'm going to say is when people comment, when they do listen, we are always open to constructive criticism. We're open to criticism.
You are. I'm not. Speak for yourself.
Any kind of criticism, but constructive is best. So if you have some suggestions, things you want to hear more about, things you don't want to hear about, let us know. Let us know. Yeah.
As long as you don't tell one of us to get off the podcast. By that, I need a job, guys. Let me stay on the podcast. Okay, so we will be here Saturday. Of course, we're going to have all kinds of content going up on the Times site between now and then. And then once Saturday goes, it's like all Rams all the time until at least January.
Yep, it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be...
Can't wait.
We are going to be all over it. Good, bad, or ugly. It's going to be fun to cover. There's going to be a lot to talk about.
There will be. We'll be here to talk about it.
All right.
All right. We'll see you next time on the Fearsome Twosome podcast, All Things NFL with Gary Klein. I'm Lindsey Thiry. We'll see you next time.